Then we will introduce different decision phases in a supply chain. The designs of different decision phases have a strong impact on overall supply chain performance. So it's very important to understand the idea of different phases. Successful supply chain management requires many decisions relating to the flow of information, product, and funds. Each decision should be made to raise the supply chain surplus. These decisions fall into three categories, or say phases, or sometimes say levels, depending on the frequency of each decision and the time frame during which a decision phase has an impact. As a result, each category of decisions must consider uncertainty over the decision horizon. The first phase is supply chain strategic design or supply chain strategic decisions. During this phase, given the marketing and pricing plans for a product, a company decides how to structure the supply chain. Over the next several years, it, decide, it decides what the supply chain's configuration will be, how resources will be allocated, and what processes each stage will perform. Strategic decision or strategic design made by company include whether to outsource or perform a supply chain function in-house, the location and capacities of production and warehousing facilities, the products to be manufactured or stored at various locations, the modes of transportation to be made available along different shipping legs, and the type of information system to be utilized. A firm must ensure that the supply chain configuration supports its strategic objectives and increases the supply chain surplus during this phase. Supply chain strategic design decisions are typically made for the long term and are very expensive to alter on short notice, or sometimes is almost impossible to alter. Consequently, when companies make these strategic decisions, they must take into account uncertainty in anticipated market conditions over the next few years. The second phase is supply chain tactical planning. For decisions made during this tactical planning phase, the time frame considered is a quarter to a year. Therefore, the supply chain's configuration determined in the strategic phase is fixed. The configuration establishes constraints within which tactical planning must be done. The goal of tactical planning is to maximize the supply chain surplus that can be generated over the tactical planning horizon, given the constraint established during the strategic phases. Companies start the tactical planning phase with a forecast for the coming year or a comparable time frame of demand in different markets. Tactical planning includes making decisions regarding which markets will be supplied from which locations, the subcontracting of manufacturing, the inventory policies to be followed, and the timing and size of marketing and price promotions. Tactical planning established parameters within which a supply chain will function over a specific period of time. In the tactical planning phase, companies must include uncertainty in demand, exchange rates, and competition over this time horizon in their decisions. Given a shorter time frame, the better forecasts than the tactical decision phase. Companies in tactical planning phase try to incorporate any flexibility built into the supply chain in the strategic design phase and exploit it to optimize performance. As a result, the tactical planning phase, companies define a set of operation policies that govern short-term operations. The third phase is supply chain operational decision or supply chain operational phase. The time horizon here is weekly or daily, and during this operational phase, companies make decisions regarding individual customer orders. At the operational level, supply chain configuration is considered fixed, and tactical planning policies are already defined. The goal of supply chain operations is to handle incoming customer orders in the best possible manner. During this operational phase, firms allocate inventory or production to individual orders, set a date that an order is to filled, generate pick lists at a warehouse, allocate an order to a particular shipping mode and shipment, set delivery schedules of trucks, and place replenishment orders. Because operational decisions are being made in the short term, say minutes, hours, or days, there is less uncertainty about demand information. Given the constraint established by the configuration and tactical planning policies, the goal during the operational phase is to exploit the reduction of uncertainty and optimize performance. The tactical, the strategical, tactical, and operational phase of a supply chain have a strong impact on overall profitability and success. In this course, we focus more on strategic decisions and some tactical phase decisions. Next, we will talk about the different process views of a supply chain. A supply chain is a sequence of processes and flows that take place within and between different stages and combine to fill a customer need for a product. There are two different ways to view the processes performed in a supply chain. The first view is called cycle view. In the cycle view processes, a supply chain are divided into a series of cycles, each performed at the interface between two successive stages of a supply chain. Another view is so-called push-pull view. The push-pull view processes in a supply chain are divided into two categories depending on whether they are executed in response to a customer order or in anticipation of customer orders. Pull processes are initiated by a customer order, whereas push processes are initiated and performed in anticipation of customer orders. We use these 5 stages supply chain to explain the cycle view of supply chain processes. As shown in this slide, this particular supply chain have 5 stages. They are supplier, manufacturer, distributor, retailer, and customer. All supply chain process can be broken down into 4 process cycles. They are customer cycle, replenishment cycle, manufacturing cycle, procurement cycle. Each cycle occurs at the interface between two successive stages of the supply chain. Not all of the supply chain have just 5 stages. Some supply chain might have 7, 10 stages. Some might just have 4 stages. Anyway, if it is multiple stages supply chain, any 2 successive stages can compose a cycle. And each cycle consists of 6 sub-processes. Each cycle starts with the supplier marketing the product to customers. Then a buyer places an order that is received by the supplier. The supplier supplies the order, which is received by the buyer. The buyer may return some of the product or order recycled material to the supplier or a third party. The cycle of activity then begins all over again. So every cycle repeats this 6 sub-process again and again. Even though each cycle has the same basic sub-processes, There are a few important differences between cycles. In customer order cycle, demand is external to the supply chain and thus uncertain. In all other cycles, order placement is uncertain but can be projected based on policy followed by the particular supply chain stages. For example, in the procurement cycle, a tire supplier to an automotive manufacturer can predict tire demand precisely once the production schedule at the manufacturer is known. The second difference is across cycles related to the scale of an order. A customer buys a single car, the dealer orders multiple cars at a time from the manufacturer, and the manufacturer in turn orders an even larger quantity of tires from the supplier. As we move from the customer to the supplier, the number of individual orders declines and the size of each order increases. Therefore, sharing the information and operating policies across supply chain stages becomes more important as we move farther from the end user. A cycle view of the supply chain is very useful when considering operational decisions because it clearly specifies the roles of each member of the supply chain. The detailed process description of a supply chain in the cycle view forces a supply chain designer to consider the infrastructure required to support these processes. A cycle view of the supply chain clearly defines the process involved and the owners of each process. This view is useful when considering operational decisions because it specifies the roles and responsibilities of each member of the supply chain and the desired outcome for each process. Let's introduce the idea of push-pull view of supply chain processes. As shown in this slide, in push-pull view, all processes in a supply chain fall into one of two categories depending on the timing of their executions relative to end customer demand. With pull processes, execution is initiated in response to a customer order. With push processes, execution is initiated in anticipation of customer orders. Therefore, at the time of execution of a pull process, customer demand is known with certainty, whereas at the time of execution of a push process, demand is not known and must be forecast. Pull processes may also be referred to as reactive processes because they react to customer demand. Push processes may also be referred to as speculative processes because they respond to speculated or say forecasted rather than actual demand. The push-pull boundary in a supply chain separates push process from pull process, as I showed in the previous slide. There is a push-pull boundary. Push processes operate in an uncertain environment because customer demand is not yet known. Pull processes operate in an environment in which customer demand is known. However, they are often constrained by inventory and capacity decisions that were made in the push process. A push-pull view of the supply chain categorizes processes based on whether they are initiated in response to a customer order or in anticipation of a customer order. This view is very useful when considering strategic decisions relating to supply chain design. The goal is to identify an appropriate push-pull boundary such that the supply chain can match supply and demand effectively. I usually like to use the human body as an analogy to supply chain system, and this can help people to understand how the supply chain works. The supply chain is just like a human body. So inside a human body, we have all different organs around our body. And this is like the member of every stage in supply chain. So all the member in supply chain is like the organs in human body. So for example, we have our fingers, we have feet, we have leg, we have arm, our heart, our head, our brain. So even you have very strong arm, strong legs, smart brain, but if you don't have the vascular system to bring the blood and the nutrition to all of your body, all to the organs in your body, your brain, your finger, your feet, your leg cannot work well, cannot function well. Even you have very smart brain, you have strong leg and feet. So not just individual member in the supply chain work very well or have an excellent product, but if you don't have transportation to move the product, move the material, move the equipment, move the parts to different stage, different member, the supply chain cannot work well. So the transportation is like the vascular system in our human body. The nervous system is like the information and communication system in supply chain. So your brain want to do something, so the nervous system send a message to your leg to your feet to your finger. So it allow you to walk to there and pick up a glass of water and bring it to your mouth and drink it. So all of this was control managed by your brain, and but those information have to send to different part of your body. So this is like the information and communication system in supply chain. Um, the information system bring all necessary information to different stage, different members in the supply chain. So the member of the supply chain know when and what they have to do. And this also help all the member, all the stages work together, cooperate together, and can have a better performance, can work like a one. So I think the human body is a good is an uh, a good analogy to supply chain. The following key points will conclude today's lecture. We first talk about the evolution of logistic management. Today's logistic management actually is the third phases of logistic management. And then we explain the three different flow integrated in a supply chain. And we talk about three different decision phases, or say three different decision levels in a supply chain. And we also talk about different process view of a supply chain. Parts of this lecture are referred to the references list in this page. So if you like to have some further study, you can find this reference